right? And so we had the child. And then if they are disrupted, this is what that becomes. But normally the child, from the child we have the family. And then we have the community. And then we have, let's say school and peers. And then from school and peers, we have the outer community, or we can say community at large. So the child, they form relationships, first with family members, then they move on to the community, and then they move on to school, peers, community at large, and this is the structure of how they're forming relationships. When that's disrupted, they don't have the same capabilities as others who have gone through this process. And so this has a possibility to impact their social learning structures in the classroom as well. So it's just something we need to think about. And this is why this is very important, because one of the things that we teach in family is how to pay attention when an adult is speaking, right? Or when other people are speaking. We teach children that explicitly, the parents or the grandparents. There are certain lessons that set them up to thrive academically. You know, we ask them questions. A child might say, why is the sky blue? Well, what do you think? Right? And so it's teaching critical thinking. But if that's not there, the children are not getting the same input that the other children had, and it's harder for them to interact in school because they just don't have the background to do so. Questions so far? No? Is everyone okay? All right. So, how can we help students know the routines and practices we will be using? This is one of the questions we have to ask ourselves, right? So whenever we have a new group of students, or whenever we're working with students ourselves, this is the first thing we should be asking ourselves. How can we help them to know the routines we'll be using? Even in university, the first time you give an activity, they don't know what to expect, right? And so how can we guide them into that? I had to do this at university. I had, for some students, we had an online portion of the course, and they didn't know how to use it. So I had to think, how can I create, how can I understand what they don't know that they don't know, and create activities so that I can make sure by the time they get to the computer and they need to know what they need to know to complete the online portion, all the knowledge is there, right? So this is one of our jobs as a teacher, questioning. The other question that we want to think about when we're trying to create this empathetic classroom is, what's happening and how do I use an empathetic approach, right? So what was the event? What is occurring right now? Thinking probably we might turn to anger, or we might be frustrated with whatever event is happening, but we might then, in the middle of it, try to do our deep breath 3 times. As we teach the children, when you feel angry, breathe 3 times before you have an emotion as part of the behavioral plan, right? Or before you say something. And then thinking at the same time, okay, so what would the empathetic approach be like to address this event, whatever it might be? So those are the things that we want to be constantly thinking of as teachers. So the first one we've talked about, supporting them whenever they have new approaches. This is very much like scaffolding, but not just scaffolding activities, scaffolding understanding of activities, right? Because scaffolding is oftentimes the content of the activity and having them being able to do the content of the activity, whereas we're also scaffolding how to do the activity as well as the content. Okay, so continue to support them until they are able to do the activities on their own, and then avoid compassion fatigue. And we will talk about that in a little bit, and I will give you more information about what compassion fatigue means. But it's something that I'm sure at some point we have all felt with some of the students that we work with in all grades, from the littlest ones to the biggest ones. Okay, I should say the oldest ones. So trauma-sensitive schools. Basically, all must be involved. That's what the research is saying. We want to have school counselors involved. They can be the first line of defense, if you will. Do all of who here works at school, by the way? Anybody? Most of you, university? Yeah? So if you work at school, oftentimes schools have counselors, and the counselors are trained in psychology and or social work, and so they have a background and can help to train staff and talk to parents about the needs of the students and or the needs of, or how to create an empathetic approach, right? School teachers, us being like in school or in university, what we can do is we can continue to take personal training time and develop our understanding of what this looks like in the classroom and how we can integrate it even sometimes into our course material, so that in addition to teaching maybe language strategies, we're teaching life strategies. In a way, it's the whole person development that we've talked about before. Everybody has to be involved when you're looking at the school itself. Let's ignore this question for now. So a whole school effort would look something like this. A shared understanding of everyone. So this includes the cooks, the people who are cleaning. It includes the counselors, the teachers. Everybody that is in the school should have training in creating a safe environment for the students. Second, the school supports all students to feel safe physically, socially, emotionally, and academically. So working on ways to make sure that they feel a connection is very important. Having maybe some after-school activities or some other activities for the students so that they can feel like they have an outlet, a place that they can go to, developing the feeling of safety. Number 3, school addresses needs in holistic ways, taking into account their relationships. So this is teacher-student, student-student relationships, right? Self-regulation. So especially for younger learners, their ability to control themselves and to make comments in class that maybe are appropriate, and or behaviors that are appropriate. Universities sometimes, there are students who don't have self-regulation as well, where they just say the first thing that comes to their mind, whether or not it's offensive to the other students, and therefore they create a distance. People don't really like them as much. So working with them on that, academic confidence, and emotional and physical well-being. So this, again, these are very difficult because sometimes the students have real threats in their lives, and sometimes they have perceived threats in their lives. For the students, it doesn't matter if it's a real threat or perceived threat. They will react about the threat in the same way, right? Okay. So number 4 is that a school explicitly connects students to the school community and provides multiple opportunities to practice newly developed skills, The fifth one is that they are embracing teamwork, and everybody is involved in teamwork and in the shared responsibility for all students. So what that might look like is that the school is continuing to have trainings and talking about, so our goal for the school is to create this safe environment. We have already done A, B, C, but we need to keep working. How can we together join all of our skills as a group to keep working on creating this sense of safety for our students, right? So that's using teamwork towards the goal of creating this safe environment. Leadership and staff continually adapt to the ever-changing needs of the learners. It's important to be open also to what those needs are, right? You cannot adapt if you are not listening. So being open to feedback, getting feedback, understanding the feedback, and taking the time to adapt. So right now what I want to do is I want to go a little more in detail about number 5.